Emma wiped the dust from her hands as she climbed the narrow woodland stairs to her grandmother's attic. The old house creaked with each step, as if it too was mourning the loss of Nana Mary. 6 long months had passed since the funeral, and Emma had finally found the strength to face this task that she had been putting off. The attic was darker than she remembered from her childhood visits. Sunbeams struggled through the single small window, creating dancing patterns on the wooden floor. Cardboard boxes of different sizes sat everywhere, each one holding pieces of a life well lived. Emma felt overwhelmed looking at them all. Not knowing where to begin, she started with a box near the window, hoping the natural light would make the job easier. Inside, she found old photograph albums, their pages yellow with age. Pictures of family gatherings, holidays, and birthdays smiled. Back at her, Emma recognized a younger self in many of them, always standing close to Nana Mary, both of them grinning at the camera. Moving to the next box, Emma discovered stacks of letters tied with string. Some were from old friends, others from family, members who lived far away. Nana Mary had kept everything, treating each letter like a precious treasure. Emma smiled, remembering how her grandmother would read letters aloud at the kitchen table, sharing news with anyone who would listen. Then Emma spotted a showbox tucked behind a larger container. It was tied with a faded pink ribbon that looked like it had been untied and retied many times over the years. Something about this box felt different, more personal somehow. Emma carefully lifted it and carried it to a spot where the afternoon light was strongest. Her fingers trembled slightly as she untied the ribbon. The box was heavier than it looked. When she lifted the lid, Emma gasped softly. Inside were dozens of birthday cards, all addressed to her. They were arranged in order by year. Starting from when she was very young, Emma picked up the first card. From her 5th birthday, it showed a cartoon princess on the front, and inside, Nana Mary had written in her careful handwriting, "Happy birthday, my darling girl. May all your dreams come true. Love, Nana Mary." Emma remembered this card. She remembered sitting on Nana Mary's lap as she read it aloud. One by one, Emma looked through the cards. Each year was represented, each one filled with loving messages in her grandmother's familiar writing. Some years had funny cards with jokes inside. Other years had more serious cards with heartfelt messages about growing up and becoming a wonderful young woman. Emma felt tears building in her eyes as she realized that Nana Mary had kept every single birthday card she had ever given her, even the simple ones Emma had made herself in school, with crooked letters and glued-on glitter, were there in the box. As she reached the bottom of the box, Emma found her 8th birthday card. She remembered this one clearly because it had been her favorite. The front showed colorful balloons floating against a blue sky, and she had always loved balloons as a child. But when Emma opened the card, something made her stop and look more carefully. There was Nana Mary's signature, just like always. "Happy birthday, my darling girl. Love, Nana Mary." But underneath it, in completely different handwriting, was another signature that simply said, "Love always, Mary." Emma blinked and looked again, certain she must be seeing things wrong. But no, there were definitely 2 signatures on the card. The second one was written in shaky, and certain letters that looked almost like a child had written them. The pencil marks were lighter, as if the person writing had pressed more gently on the paper. She turned the card over, looking for any clue about the second signature. There was nothing else written anywhere. Emma held the card up to the window light, studying both signatures carefully. Her heart began to beat faster with curiosity and confusion. Why would Nana Mary sign the same card twice, and why did the second signature look so completely different? The writing was definitely not her grandmother's neat. careful style. This looked like someone else entirely had signed the card. Emma sat back on her heels, still holding the card. She felt like she had discovered a mystery. A secret that had been hidden in this dusty attic for over 20 years. The name Mary was the same as her grandmother's, but the handwriting told a different story. Questions filled Emma's mind. Who else could have signed this card? Why had she never noticed it before? And most puzzling of all, why had this person remained a secret? All these years, Emma carefully placed the card in her lap and looked through the other cards again, searching for more clues. But all the other cards had only one signature each, all in Nana Mary's recognizable handwriting. She picked up the mysterious card once more, running her finger gently over both signatures. There was definitely a story here, hidden in these simple words written so long ago. Emma knew that she would not rest until she discovered the truth about the second Mary who had signed her birthday card with such love. Emma barely slept that night. The birthday card with the signatures sat on her bedside table, and every time she closed her eyes, she saw those shaky letters spelling out love always, Mary. As soon as the sun came up, she knew she had to talk to her mother. The drive to her mother's house felt longer than usual. Emma gripped the steering wheel tightly, the birthday card safely tucked in her purse. She had so many questions racing through her mind. But she was also nervous about what the answers might be. When Emma arrived, she found her mother Helen kneeling in the back garden, pulling weeds from around the rose bushes. Helen loved her garden and spent most mornings there, especially when something was troubling her. Emma wondered if her mother somehow knew this. Conversation was coming. Helen looked up when she heard footsteps on the garden path. She smiled at Emma, but there was something tired in her eyes, as if she had not slept well either. "Good morning, love," Helen said, brushing dirt from her gardening gloves. "You're up early today." Emma sat down on the woodland garden bench that overlooked her mother's flower beds. The morning air was cool and fresh, and birds were singing in the old oak tree that had been there since Emma was a child. "Mum, I found something strange yesterday in Nana's things," Emma said carefully. She pulled the birthday card from her purse and held it up to her mother. Helen wiped her hands on her apron and took the card. The moment she saw it, her face changed completely. All the color drained from her cheeks, and she sat down heavily beside Emma on the bench. The card shook slightly in her hands. "Oh my," Helen whispered, staring at the two signatures, her eyes filled with tears that she tried to blink away. Emma watched her mother's reaction with growing concern. "Mom, what is it? You look like you've seen a ghost." Helen was quiet for a long moment, still looking at the card. When she finally spoke, her voice was so soft that Emma had to lean closer to hear her. "I wondered when this day would come," Helen said, a single tear rolling down her cheek. "I always thought you might find something." Eventually, Emma felt her heart start to beat faster. "What do you mean? What is it that I found?" Helen took a deep breath and looked up at the sky, as if she was gathering courage from somewhere far away. "Emma, your Nana Mary had a twin sister. Her name was Mary too, but everyone in the family called her Little Mary so people could tell them apart." Emma's mouth dropped open. She stared at her mother, certain she must have heard wrong. "A twin sister. But I never met her. I never even heard about her. She lived in a care home across town." Helen continued, her voice getting stronger. "She lived there for most of her life, ever since she was a teenager." Emma shook her head in confusion. "But why didn't anyone ever tell me about her? Why didn't I ever meet my great-aunt?" Helen's face looked sad and ashamed at the same time. She folded her hands in her lap and looked down at them. "Your grandfather, Nana Mary's husband, was ashamed of little Mary. She was born with learning difficulties, and in those days, Many families felt embarrassed about such things. They thought it was better to keep it secret. Emma felt a flash of anger. That's terrible. How could anyone be ashamed of family? It was different back then. Helen said sadly. People didn't understand these things the way we do now. Your grandfather thought he was protecting the family by keeping little Mary's existence quiet. But your Nana Mary never agreed with him. Helen explained that despite her husband's wishes, Nana Mary visited her twin sister every single month for over 40 years. She would take the bus across town to the care home, bringing photographs and stories about the family. Little Mary especially loved hearing about you, Helen said, looking at Emma with fresh tears from the day you were born. Nana Mary would show her sister your pictures and tell her everything about your life. What you were learning in school, what games you liked to play, how tall you were getting. Emma listened in amazement as her mother continued the story. Every month, when Emma's birthday came round, Nana Mary would take the birthday card to the care home before giving it to Emma. Little Mary would insist on signing it too. Even though her writing was difficult and took her a long time, she would hold the pencil so carefully. Helen said, smiling through her tears, it took her ages to write those few words. But she was so proud every time she finished. She would say, now Emma will know that little Mary loves her too. Emma felt her heart breaking and healing at the same time. All these years, she had an aunt who loved her deeply, who followed her life story, who signed her birthday cards with shaking hands, an aunt she had never been allowed to meet. She loved you so much, Emma, Helen said, taking her daughter's hand. Even though she never got to hold you or talk to you, you were one of the most important people in her world. Emma looked down at the birthday card again, seeing the second signature in a completely new way. Those shaky letters suddenly looked beautiful, filled with love that had traveled across town and across years to reach her. Emma spent the entire week thinking about little Mary. She could not concentrate at work, and she found herself staring at the birthday card during her lunch breaks. The idea that she had an aunt who loved her but had never been allowed to meet her felt like a puzzle with missing pieces. On Saturday morning, Emma made a decision. She got dressed carefully, as if she were going to meet someone important. In a way, she was. She was going to meet the memory of someone who had loved her for her entire life. The drive across town to Willowbrook Care Home took about 20 minutes. Emma had never been to this part of the city before. The streets were quieter here, lined with older houses and tall trees. When she finally saw the sign for Willowbrook, her hands started shaking on the steering wheel. The care home was a large, friendly-looking building with flower gardens in front and benches where residents could sit in the sunshine. Emma parked her car and sat for a moment, trying to calm her nervous heart. She had brought a small photo album that she had found tucked away in Nana Mary's bedroom, hoping it might tell her more about little Mary. The front entrance had glass doors and a warm reception area with comfortable chairs and soft music playing. Emma walked up to the desk where a kind-looking woman with grey hair was sorting through papers. "Hello," Emma said, her voice sounding smaller than she had intended. "My name is Emma Clark. I think my great-aunt used to live here. Her name was Mary, but people called her Little Mary." The woman behind the desk looked up with immediate recognition and a bright smile. "Oh my goodness. You must be Emma. Little Mary's Emma. I'm Mrs. Thompson, the director here." She came round the desk and took Emma's hands in hers. "We have been hoping someone from your family would come visit someday." Emma felt tears start to form in her eyes. "You knew about me. Knew about you." Mrs. Thompson laughed gently. "Dear, little Mary talked about you every single day for years. And years, you were the most famous person in this entire building. Everyone here knew about Emma, the clever girl who was going to be a teacher and help children learn. Mrs. Thompson led Emma to a comfortable sitting area and brought her a cup of tea. As they sat together, Mrs. Thompson began to share memories of little Mary that made Emma both laugh and cry. "Your aunt was such a gentle soul," Mrs. Thompson said, her eyes twinkling with fond memories. "She had the sweetest way of seeing the world. Everything was either beautiful or wonderful to her. But nothing made her happier than when your grandmother, Mary, would visit with news about you." Emma learned that little Mary had a special routine every month. The day after Nana Mary's visit, little Mary would spend the entire day telling everyone about Emma's latest adventures. She would go from room to room, sharing the news with other residents, the nurses, the kitchen staff, and anyone else who would listen. She would say things like, "My clever niece Emma lost her first tooth," or "Emma learned to ride a bicycle all by herself," Mrs. Thompson explained. She remembered every detail, even though she had trouble remembering other things. Double quotes. Mrs. Thompson stood up and gestured for Emma to follow her. "Would you like to see a room? We kept it exactly the same for a while after she passed away, and there are some things there that I think you should see." They walked down a hallway decorated with cheerful paintings and photographs of residents enjoying activities. Mrs. Thompson stopped at a door near the end of the hall and opened it gently. The room was small but cozy, with a single bed, a comfortable chair by the window, and a small table. But what took Emma's breath away was what she saw on the bedside table. There sat a photo album, similar to the one Emma had brought with her. "Your grandmother brought photos every month for 40 years, Mrs. Thompson said softly. Little Mary would spend hours looking at this album and showing it to visitors. Emma sat down on the edge of the bed and opened the album with trembling hands. The first page showed a baby photo of Emma that she recognized from her mother's house. As she turned the pages, she saw her entire childhood laid out before her. School photos from every grade, birthday party pictures, Christmas morning scenes, family vacations. Her high school graduation. Every important moment of Emma's life was there, carefully placed in the album by someone who had never been able to share those moments in person. Emma noticed that some photos had small notes written in shaky handwriting beside them. Emma's first day of school. Emma wins spelling contest. Emma graduates. She memorized every detail about your life, Mrs. Thompson said, sitting beside Emma. She may not have been able to read well, but she could tell you exactly what was happening in every single photograph. You were her pride and joy. Emma flipped through page after page, seeing evidence of a love that had existed in secret for her entire life. Here was proof that someone had been following her journey, celebrating her victories, and keeping her memory close even when they could not be together. She passed away 2 years ago, Mrs. Thompson said gently. It was very peaceful, but right up until the end. She was still talking about you. She was so proud that you had become a teacher. Just like she always said you would. Emma closed the album and held it against her chest. Feeling overwhelmed by the depth of love she had discovered, she realized that love does not need meetings or conversations to be real and powerful. Sometimes the strongest connections exist in the quiet spaces of the heart. The following Saturday, Emma found herself driving back to Willowbrook Care Home. She had not planned to return so soon, but something was pulling her there. She felt like she had found a missing piece of her family, and she wanted to learn more about the place where little Mary had lived for so many years. When Emma walked through the front doors, Mrs. Thompson greeted her with surprise and delight. Emma, how wonderful to see you again so soon. The residents have been talking about your visit all week. Emma spent the afternoon moving from room to room, meeting the people who had been little Mary's friends and neighbors. Each person had stories to share about her aunt, and Emma listened to everyone with growing amazement. Mrs. Patterson, who lived in the room next to where little Mary had stayed, told Emma about how little Mary would knock on her door every month after Nana Mary's visits. She would be so excited, Mrs. Patterson said with a chuckle. She would sit right here on my bed and tell me everything about your latest adventures. She made me feel like I knew you personally. In the common room, Emma met several residents who were playing cards round a small table. When they learned who she was, they all started talking at once, sharing their favorite memories of little Mary and her stories about Emma. She was so proud when you graduated from university, said Mr. Wilson, an elderly man with kind eyes. She told everyone that her niece was going to be a teacher and help children learn to read, just like she wished she could have done better. Emma felt tears in her eyes as she realized how many people had been touched by little Mary's love. For her aunt had shared Emma's life with an entire community, making them all feel connected to her journey. On her third visit, Emma met James, a quiet man who spent most of his time sitting by the window in the sunroom. He was probably in his 80s, with white hair and gentle hands that shook slightly when he moved. James rarely talked to visitors, according to Mrs. Thompson. But when he saw Emma, his face lit up with recognition. "You must be Emma," he said, with a smile that transformed his whole appearance. "Little Mary told us so much about you over the years. She said you were going to change the world. One child at a time." Emma sat down beside James, and he told her that his own family lived far away and rarely visited. "But little Mary made me feel like I had family close by," he said. "When she would tell us about your birthday parties and school plays, it was like watching my own grandchild grow up." That conversation stayed with Emma as she drove home that evening. She pulled into a parking spot near the care home and sat in her car, thinking about everything she had learned. Little Mary's love had not just reached Emma across the years and distance. It had also touched the lives of dozens of other people who had felt forgotten by their own families. Emma pulled out her phone and looked up the number for the local newspaper. Her hands were shaking slightly as she dialed, but she knew she had to do something with this feeling that was growing in her heart. "Hello," she said when a reporter answered. "My name is Emma Clark, and I have an idea for a story. Actually, I have an idea for something bigger than a story. I want to start a program to help families stay connected, no matter what challenges they might face." The reporter was interested and asked Emma to come in the following week to discuss her idea. Emma spent the next several days thinking carefully about what she wanted to create. She remembered how Nana Mary had bridged the gap between her world and little Mary's world through monthly visits and shared stories. Emma decided to call her idea the Mary Project in honor of both Mary's sisters who had shown her what love could accomplish even in difficult circumstances. The newspaper article about Emma's idea was published on a Sunday morning, and by Monday afternoon, Emma's phone was ringing constantly. People from all over the city were calling to volunteer or to ask for help connecting with family members in care homes. Within a month, Emma had organized the first group of volunteers. The program was simple but powerful. Volunteers would visit care homes and help residents stay connected with their families. They would bring photos from family members who lived far away, read letters aloud to residents who could no longer see well enough to read them themselves, and help set up video calls with grandchildren and relatives. Some volunteers helped families who had lost touch due to old arguments or misunderstandings. Others worked with residents whose families lived in different countries or were simply too busy with their own lives to visit regularly. Emma watched in amazement as the Mary Project grew larger every week. Families who had not spoken in years began to reconnect. Children learned about great-aunts and great-uncles they had never known existed. Residents who had felt forgotten suddenly had regular visitors and connections to the outside world. One evening, As Emma was leaving Willowbrook after a particularly busy day of volunteer coordination, Mrs. Thompson stopped her in the hallway. "Emma," she said, "I want you to know that little Mary would be so proud of what you have created here. She always believed that love should connect people, not divide them." Emma smiled, finally understanding that Nana Mary had been building bridges all along. Through her monthly visits and her insistence that little Mary sign birthday cards, she had been showing Emma that love finds a way to connect hearts, even when the world tries to keep them apart. Emma woke up on the morning of her 30th birthday feeling different than she had on any birthday before. The sun was just beginning to rise, painting the sky in soft pink and orange colors. Instead of staying in bed like she usually did on weekend mornings, Emma got dressed quietly and made herself a cup of coffee. She had been planning this morning for weeks. In her bag, she carried a special birthday card that was unlike any card she had ever received. This card was covered with signatures from every single resident at Willowbrook Care Home. Mrs. Thompson had helped organize it, and even residents who had trouble writing had added their names with shaky but determined hands. The drive to Meadowview Cemetery took about 15 minutes. Emma had only been there once before, for Nana Mary's funeral, but she remembered exactly where to go. The cemetery was peaceful in the early morning light, with dew still sparkling on the grass and birds singing softly in the old oak trees. Emma parked her car and walked slowly along the winding path until she found what she was looking for. There, under a large tree that provided shade in the summer, were two headstones side by side. The larger one belonged to Nana Mary, with her full name and the dates of her long life carved in elegant letters. Beside it was a smaller, simpler stone that read Mary Clark, Little Mary, beloved sister. Emma stood between the two graves, feeling a strange mix of sadness and peace. She had never stood here before, never had the chance to say goodbye to little Mary properly. But now, holding the birthday card from all the residents, she felt like she was finally able to complete a conversation that had been going on for 30 years. She opened the card and read aloud in a clear voice that carried across the quiet cemetery. "Happy birthday, Emma. Thank you for showing us that love connects us all. Your Aunt Mary would be so proud of the bridges you have built. We know she is watching over the Mary Project and smiling. With love from all your friends at Willowbrook." Emma's voice cracked slightly as she read the last few signatures. James had signed his name in careful letters, and Mrs. Patterson had drawn a small heart next to hers. Even some residents who barely knew Emma had added their names. Understanding somehow that this was important, Emma knelt down and placed the card gently on little Mary's grave, using a small stone to keep it from blowing away in the morning breeze. "Thank you for loving me, Aunt Mary," she whispered. "I wish I had known you when you were alive, but I feel you with me now every day. I hope you like what we have built together." She stayed there for a few more minutes, telling both Mary's sisters about the Mary Project and how it had grown beyond anything she could have imagined. Over 200 volunteers were now involved, and they had helped reconnect more than 500 families across the city. 3 other care homes had joined the program, and Emma had been invited to speak about it at a conference next month. As Emma drove home, she thought about all the lives that had been changed by the discovery of that one birthday card with 2 signatures. Mrs. Chen, an elderly woman at Willowbrook, now had weekly video calls with her grandchildren in Canada. Mr. Rodriguez had reconnected with his son after 10 years of silence following a family argument. Sarah, a young volunteer, had learned about her great-uncle who lived in a care home across town and had never been visited by family. The Mary Project had become something bigger than Emma had ever dreamed. It was not just about connecting families, anymore. It had become a community of people who understood that everyone deserves to be loved and remembered, no matter their age or abilities or circumstances. That evening, Emma sat in her living room with a small pile of birthday cards from friends and co-workers, but the one that meant the most to her was from her mother, Helen. When Emma opened it, she found Helen's familiar handwriting. "Happy birthday, my darling daughter. I am so proud of the woman you have become and the love you have brought into the world. Love, Mom." But underneath her mother's signature, in different handwriting that was carefully formed but still shaky, were the words, "Love always, from Aunt Mary too." Emma stared at the card, then looked up at her mother, who was sitting across from her with tears in her eyes. "Mom, did you write this?" Helen nodded. "I have been practicing little Mary's handwriting from her old letters. I wanted you to know that her love is still with you. Even now, she would be so proud of everything you have accomplished in her memory." Emma felt her heart fill with a warmth that seemed to spread through her entire body. She understood finally that love never truly dies. It continues to grow and spread and touch new lives long after the person who first felt it is gone. Little Mary's love had reached Emma across years and silence, and now it was reaching hundreds of other people through the Mary Project. Emma looked round her living room, where she kept a framed photo of the two Mary sisters that she had found in Nana. Mary's things. In the picture, they were young women, standing arm in arm and smiling at the camera. They looked so happy together, so connected despite the challenges they would face. The Mary Project continues to grow every month, bringing families together and ensuring that no one is forgotten. Emma learned that love is not about being perfect or having all the right words to say. Love is about remembering, about valuing each person, and about building connections that make everyone feel like they belong to something bigger than themselves. T. And